Classics can be absolute bricks. And I get it, you don't always want to commit to a book that's over 800 pages. That's why I compiled a list of 10 classics, all under 200 pages, that are absolutely worth your time. Because today, less is absolutely more. We start off with a French classic, and I will admit, when I first read this book, which was in high school, I absolutely hated it. Later on though, I went back to it, read it again in the original French as well in a translation, and I must say it started growing on me. L'Étranger, or The Stranger by Albert Camus, is a strange little book. In this book we meet our main character Meursault at his mother's funeral, and he doesn't feel anything. He just stands there, apathic, unable to feel any emotions. Later on it gets worse and worse. He gets into fights, into altercations, he even murders someone and still doesn't feel a thing. It isn't until much later, when he's in prison and he's talking to the chaplain, that he starts realizing he has emotions. And he starts feeling again. And all of a sudden the floodgates are open. This is a book full of existentialism. What is the meaning of life and is it worth living? Yes, it does get philosophical at times, but it is also rather funny. It has this dark, morbid sense of humor. This book packs a punch, and there is lots to discuss. It asks questions like, what's the point of it all? And in the end, it does propose answers like, there might not be a point, whatever. Life is short, so is this book. Let's get on with it. The Stranger by Albert Camus. The second one for today is Ice by Anna Kavan. Anna Kavan was a British novelist, painter, short story writer, but Ice is her last and most famous book. You could call it science fiction, you could call it post-apocalyptical, but none of these terms would do it justice. Ice is a bit of an odd one out. Earth has been ravaged by nuclear war, and this massive ice shelf is threatening us all. Now I could try to summarize the plot for you, but I'm not sure there actually is one. Ice is like a fever dream, an hallucination. There are no named characters. The main protagonist, the narrator, is considered delusional. POV switch from what we think is the actual world to dreams and hallucinations, and everything seems coincidence. Now the one recurring theme is the threat of the ice, the cold, and the wasteland. If you're looking for a good story, then this is not the book for you. If you, however, do like a strange, haunting theme that gets under your skin, a book that makes you wonder what on earth you're reading, and a world that is both familiar and alien, then Ice is the book for you. Now for number 3, this would not be a video of mine if I did not jump at this opportunity to slide in some Virginia Woolf. And you might not have heard of this one. This one is Street Haunting. And Street Haunting is a short essay, and it is all about an evening's walk in wintry London. Virginia Woolf, with the pretext of needing a pencil, goes out on a walk. She needs the quiet, she needs the solitude. And there is no better place than to hide in the masses than a wintry evening in London. And as she walks from her house up to the store and all around London, she starts to lose herself in her thoughts. And as she hides and becomes anonymous in the masses, she starts to observe other people. And she starts to imagine what their lives would be like. When she sees a well-to-do Londoner, she starts to imagine how they live, whether they have staff, how they are served at breakfast, things like that. And all of a sudden, this multitude of pedestrians becomes the source of many, many stories. Some might be true, some might be false, but that's not the point. This is a book if you like people watching. This is a book if you like solitude, to be alone with your own thoughts, if you like to walk, I guess. And after reading this book, I found myself doing the same exercise. Just go out, have a walk in the city, and look at people. Imagine where they're going, who they are, where they live. It is the ultimate form of escapism for introverts, and I absolutely love it. Street Haunting by Virginia Woolf. Just try it. And I will say I discovered something else about Virginia Woolf, and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. So do keep watching, because I'll reveal what it is as our last book for today. And then we have The Star Child by Oscar Wilde. I already talked about this book in my Oscar Wilde video, but it certainly earns a mention here as well. The Star Child is one of his fairy tales. It is a story about a boy, an orphan, who is very, very good looking. And as he is adopted, he actually believes that he is the son of a star and he is above everyone. He grows up to be vain, arrogant, cruel, and one day, when he meets this beggar woman, he mocks her for being ugly, for being poor, for being beneath him, without knowing that she is his actual mother. As punishment for this cruelty, he gets cursed and he becomes this monstrosity himself, and he has to stay that way until he can show that he is capable of kindness. Kindness to others and to himself. Yes, this might be a fairy tale, but it very much feels like an Oscar Wilde book. It has recurring themes from The Picture of Dorian Gray. It has the sharp wit that we've come to know and love Oscar Wilde for. It is a quick read, it feels like a fairy tale, but it is something more. If you read the classics by Oscar Wilde and you enjoyed them, then I absolutely recommend this one. This is amongst the best of his fairy tales, and it is absolutely worth a read. The Star Child by Oscar Wilde. And then we have a book that I was actually surprised has never been mentioned before on this channel. And honestly, I don't know why, because this one is an absolute masterpiece of American literature. Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck takes us to California, in the middle of the Great Depression, and we follow these two laborers, these two workers that hope, aspire to own their own land one day. All they want is to be happy and have their own farm. The problem is, things are not going their way. There are migrant workers, uneducated, and one of them is a bit simple. He's enormously strong, but he's a few sandwiches short of a picnic. And they try their best, but they are in fact powerless due to economical, intellectual and social circumstances. Steinbeck takes their dreams and absolutely crushes them. And I must say, this book felt also very lonely to me. All of the characters are looking for companionship and they simply cannot seem to find it. This is a dark and bleak book, and it might not be for everyone. It captures the landscape and the era of the Great Depression ever so well, it reads like a play, and if you haven't read it yet, then what are you doing? Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. And while we are talking Steinbeck, let's talk about The Pearl. The Pearl is a very different kind of story. It is a story of this family who needs money. Their little baby boy has been stung by a scorpion and they need the money to pay for a doctor and treatment. So his father goes out and he goes to dive for pearls, and he finds the motherlode. He finds the absolute biggest pearl he has ever seen, and he believes that all of their problems are going to be solved because of this. Spoilers, they are not. He soon finds out that this sudden influx of wealth changes everything. All of a sudden, he becomes the target of thieves. All of a sudden, people are trying to be friendly with them, but also try to swindle them. His wife doesn't want any of this and she tries to convince him to throw the pearl back into the sea, which he refuses to do. And things only get worse. And all of the hope, the promise of security and wealth and comfort, suddenly becomes very, very dark. This book was originally a movie script that was turned into a short story, and it does feel like it. The story feels a bit thin at times, but Steinbeck remedies that with excellent writing. It is chilling, it is emotional, and it makes you think. It makes you think about poverty, wealth, greed, and the society that we live in. It is a very short novella, it is a quick read, but it absolutely packs a punch. The Pearl by John Steinbeck. Then let's do some science fiction. And this book has always fascinated me a lot. It is of course The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, but most people know it as the dramatization that has been done by Orson Welles and reputedly caused a panic. Listeners who did not know that the events they were hearing were dramatizations, were fictional, actually believed the Martians had landed and just fled their houses. This book has inspired films, radio plays, games, you name it, but it is actually just that. The arrival of the Martians and the collapse of human society. This book has never been out of print since, and it is hugely influential on movie, pop culture, even science. This book actually helped develop the multi-stage rocket which put men on the moon. But Does that mean it is a good book? Well, I'm a bit on the fence about it. For me, much of its allure comes from its reputation, the things that happened around it. If Orson Welles hadn't dramatized this one, if there hadn't been 7 movies inspired by this one, would I still think it is a good book? Honestly, I'm not sure. It certainly starts off with a bang. It starts off very strong and you're immediately immersed in the whole story. But as the book progresses, things slow down, and I'm not really sure it is the gripping tale I expected it to be. I thought the end was a bit disappointing, and I must say that this book hasn't always aged well. It is still better than most of the movies, but I think this is the case where the radio play is actually better than the book. Nevertheless, feel free to make up your own mind and prove me wrong. The War of the Worlds by A.G. Wells. Then let's do some Russian literature, because not all of Russian classics are absolute bricks of books. This is The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Tolstoy. Our main character, Ivan Ilyich, is actually a boring man. He leads a normal, boring life. He's a judge, he is married, he has a little family. There's nothing out of the ordinary about him. He has a very simple, ordinary life that absolutely feels like a prison cell. And then one day, while he's hanging up the curtains, of all things, he falls. He starts to suffer from this strange abdominal pain which only gets worse, but doctors can't really pinpoint the reason for it. Can't be cured, and he is about to die. And in the face of that, Ivan Ilyich opens his eyes and he suddenly realizes that he has never actually lived. All of a sudden he realizes he sees the hypocrisy of the world around him and of his own life that doesn't really have a meaning. All throughout the book, Ivan Ilyich is in pain, and it's not just physical. This is a powerful and emotional book. It is a book about mortality. It is a book that asks you questions like, don't you have better things to do with your life than make silly YouTube videos? I would recommend this to anyone who would love to start with Russian classics. It is the typical dark, heavy, slow read, but in a much shorter format. It is a masterpiece about death and dying, and if a darker, more philosophical book is your cup of tea, then absolutely pick this one up. The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. Let's do one more before I reveal that Virginia Woolf treasure that I found, and let's go to Japan for this one. This is The Snow Country by Yasunari Kawabata. At its core, this is a love story. The love story between a wealthy man and a geisha. He is a rich married man who travels to the countryside to meet up with his liaison. Yes, he is attracted to her, but it isn't much more than that. It isn't love. She, on the other hand, falls in love with him, which is against the geisha code. After all, she is there to fulfill all of his needs without the emotional attachment. For him, the relationship and the train ride is just an escape. An escape from a boring life and a boring marriage. But for her, it is the hope and the dream for something better. Their relationship is destined to fail, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. Now, at first, I thought this book wasn't going to be for me, but it grew on me quickly. First of all, the language is absolutely beautiful. Kawabata doesn't use too many words. His sentences are short and crisp and to the point. However, he does manage to get really lyrical and poetical about it. The way he describes the cold and snowy landscape is almost a picture, a painting. It is poetry. Much is left unsaid. A lot in this book is left up to your imagination, and I really like that about it. The whole story is told in equal parts things that have been said and things that have never been said before. Nobel Prize winners don't always make for agreeable, enjoyable reads, but this one was the exception. It was a short book and I wanted it to be longer. I hoped for more for the characters, just to be left with the cold, snowy landscape. Snow Country by Yasunari Kawabata. And then it is time for the reveal, because I found an absolute gem. Yes, it could have a place in this list. It is a bit longer, around 250 pages, but it is still a very entertainable short read. It isn't a novella, it isn't really a book, but it is a collection of letters. These are the love letters that are written between Virginia Woolf and her lover Vita Sackville West. And while I'm reading this one, I only have one thought. Why do people not write letters anymore like these ones? They are funny, they are adorable, they are literate, they are poetical, they are everything. It is not really fiction, but it certainly reads as it. You get a glimpse into their lives and thoughts. Some of these letters are very mundane. They tell about boredom, they tell about the life around them, the everyday things, but others are full of passion and desire and the love that these two women shared between themselves. And I will say, if you ever have the desire to become a better flirt, then this is absolutely the manual for you. This book contains their whole correspondence all the way up to Virginia's suicide. It comes with little annotations and notes that explain things to you. If you are a Virginia Woolf fan, like I am, then you absolutely have to have this book. The Love Letters between Virginia Woolf and Vita Sackville West. And there you have it. 10 short classics, all under 200 pages that are absolutely worth your time. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, do leave a like, do leave a comment. And if you're into short stories and quick reads like I am, then absolutely go watch this video as well.